Hi, this is JoAnna Brandi, and welcome to Living on the Growing Edge. It's a crazy, changing, evolving, and expanding world. So, staying ahead today means more than just keeping up, it means exploring the frontiers of thought, innovation, ideation. In this long form video series, I bring you face to face with visionaries, disruptors, thinkers who are shaping tomorrow's workplaces and worlds by living out on the growing edge. They're reframing, reimagining, and re envisioning. And as I learned from my first guest, reinventing. So I'm happy you're here. Enjoy the series. You can always leave comments below and be sure to subscribe while you're here. Welcome. My name is JoAnna Brandi. I'm a consultant, speaker, and curious individual who always wants to understand how people are thinking. So I decided that I would like to recreate a situation I used to have all the time when I spoke at big conferences and get myself in a situation where I can have delicious conversations with really smart people, especially smart people who are living out on what I call the growing edge. These are the people that see things before they happen. These are the people that know something's going to happen before anybody else gets wind of it. These are the kinds of people that get me excited. So my first guest, and this is our first program, my first guest is Bruce Cryer, the former CEO of HeartMath Institute. I'll tell you a little bit about him, but I'm going to let him mostly introduce himself because he's got a really long, wonderful, and very engaging bio. So Bruce was one of the founders of HeartMath Institute, a research institute in California. We met, I don't know, 30 years ago or so when I went up that winding road for the first time. I've been studying with HeartMath for a long time, learning how to not only reduce my stress, but deepen my intuition, because when your head and your heart connect, it's kind of a magic thing. But Bruce has a rather amazing background. He was on Broadway. You were the lead in Fantastics for how many years?
Well, 800 performances.
100 performances. That's amazing, isn't it? So I'm going to I really want you to do most of the talking. I will ask some questions and keep us going. But I really would, and I just want to say, because I love what you're doing now, because it fits in with the theme of the show so just beautifully. I read two of your last newsletters, and they're all about reinvention.
Yes.
So we'll get all into that, and I want to have a little fun here because we're here for an hour. It's our intention. When I used to go to conferences, one of the best part of that was the late night talks, not conferences, late night talks with the other speakers over a scotch on the rocks. So pretend you have a scotch on the rocks. And it's quite, oh yeah,
Scotch and matcha. It's the
scotch
new way to do.
down to lemon water at this point. But those were the kind of conversations that just went, they went deep, they went in all different directions, and I always felt this great sense of satisfaction when they were done. So that's what I'm hoping to recreate here, not only for myself, but for you and for all of our what viewers. I was going to say watchers, our viewers. So there we go. So where would you like to start? With your HeartMath experience or your Broadway experience?
Well, chronologically, the New York musical theater it predated HeartMath, of course, and I think it's useful to hear some of the background of what makes me do what I do now, which is sort of post HeartMath as well. So yeah, as you mentioned, JoAnna, yeah, I had about a 5-year career in New York in musical theater, and the biggest thing was this. I was one of those leading roles in this marvelous show called The Fantastics. All New Yorkers know The Fantastics, or at least New Yorkers of our generation. We all saw it, let alone had friends that were performing in it. So I did about 800 performances in that show back in the 70s. But I also did other tours, Jesus Christ Superstar, and Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, and a couple small films and a bunch of commercials that I did quite nicely with. But after a while, as much as I loved being on stage, and I realized I had a talent as a singer, as a dancer, as an actor, nevertheless, I felt like I wasn't impacting someone's life long enough. I knew I was probably inspiring them and exciting them for a Saturday night.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Sunday morning, they'd be still talking about it over coffee. But Monday morning, 9 a.m., it's probably long gone. And it's back to the grind of the job or the kids, whatever else is going on. And I was already a seeker. I was already studying meditation and yoga, and had been, and was a, at the time it was called, we called it vegetarian. It sounds quaint now, but and so I was into that kind of stuff since a teenager, but it kind of went on hold for a bit when I got in the whole entertainment field. And then after, when I was in, I was in the most secure theater job you can imagine, because when I went in the show, it was in its 13th year. It
My
didn't
God.
close. It didn't close until this 55th year.
Oh, I had no idea.
55 years. So it was the longest running musical in the world. And so it was quite an honor to be in it and all that. But, and I knew they wanted me in their show. I was in twice actually, and they brought me back. They let go an actor so I could come back on the show. So I had, security and, this marvelous love story about a boy and a girl, and I was the boy. And so every night I got to win the girl. I got to lose the girl. I got to win her back at the end. I got kissed, I got slapped, I guess I got hugged again, so it was like a marvelous, sweet show. And yet I felt like, as I said, I wasn't making a long enough impact, and I wanted to explore what would that feel like. And I didn't know what that meant. It's not like I had another thing I could do. And in those days, I'm so interested now. Musical theater kids in New York now, they can be coaches. They can be life coaches when they're not in a show. There's so
Yeah.
many entrepreneurial things they can now do that weren't options, or at least not for most of us. We didn't think that way. So anyway, fast forward. So I moved to California with my girlfriend, who was herself a very skilled singer, dancer, actor, and very successful, also in New York. And we both said, look, we're unplugging from that life completely. We want to change our life completely. We moved from Manhattan to a redwood forest in California.
That's the growing edge. That is definitely the growing edge. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and luckily we had done well. We had some savings, so we didn't have pressure to get a job right away at all. I mean, I think it was a year before I felt like it's time to start asking for some actual pay for the work I'm doing. So it's nice to have that freedom. But I knew that this was the next step for me, was to dive into my own growth and really understand about health and well-being and spirituality and personal growth in any way I possibly could. And so that was my focus all through the 80s. And during that time, I met a man who was a fascinating guy named Doc Childrey.
Doc.
And he is the man who in 1990 founded HeartMath. And so I met him in 1980, and we had a strong connection back then and then over the years. And so when he was kind of dreaming up all the ideas about what this research institute would be like, and he was planning to start it, coincidentally, in the town where I was already living. He didn't live there. He wanted to move to the town where I was and other people. At any rate, that all happened, and that was called HeartMath. So I was part of the original team back in 1990, and very, very, very involved in that organization for more than 20 years, 11 years as CEO. And that was an extremely growthful period. And talk about a growing edge. I mean, we were building from nothing an organization which is now revered around the world. I mean, especially in kind of health and wellness circles and in healthcare, but also in a lot of leadership circles. I wrote an article for Harvard Business Review back in 2003. I'm sure you saw it. And the article was kind of an innocuous title, "Pull the Plug on Stress."
Yep.
Harvard told us several months later that it was one of the most popular articles they'd ever had, because it was all these practical ideas based on scientific research that we had done at HeartMath to help executives deal with this perfect storm of performance challenges, family challenges, health challenges, all summed up in a case study that the article was written about. But my point being, what HeartMath was doing was using kind of mainstream medical research to confirm intuitive ideas that the average person had. Stress is hurting me, there's no doubt, but they didn't know how it was or how to change it. We
Yep.
were all just kind of feeling overwhelmed by stress, but what do you do about it? You kind of live with it. Well, it's stress, like you're stuck, you're resigned. But HeartMath was coming along and using mainstream science, using research methodology methodologies that cardiologists and neurologists and pediatricians and nurses would respect, because we wanted to impact healthcare systems as well as corporations, as well as schools, as well as families, the whole gamut. And we realized if we did not take a fairly conservative mainstream approach to some of our research, we would never gain the credibility. We would never get in a place like the Harvard Business Review. So in 2003, when we approached them about an article, it took a while to get it accepted, but they accepted it. But the scientific credibility that we had built up at that point for about a dozen years had a lot to do with why they were excited ultimately about the article, and why it ultimately was very successful. And 12 years after it was first published, I don't know if I even ever told you this, JoAnna, Harvard republished it. They emailed me in 2015 saying,
Wow.
we're doing a special issue, kind of a best of issue. And this is one of the best articles we've ever had on executive health, stress, and performance. Can we publish it again? And I'm really busy. Let me get back to you in a few months. I'm so sorry. I'll have my people call your people. So of course the answer was yes. So it was quite an honor that HBR on its own decided to republish that article. So the point of all this is that I love it as much as I love being on stage, and I'm on stage again, actually. It wasn't as much as I wanted to contribute. And HeartMath was giving, I was, obviously very much involved. I was part of the leadership team from day one, CEO 11 years, doing a lot, traveling 4 continents, over 1 million miles, doing HeartMath presentations and keynotes and coaching and you name it. So it was very active life. And then, as you know, I got sick, and it was a couple of years of pretty hairy stuff, and I'm healed. I'm 15 years cancer free now. I'm 14 years staph infection free. I'm 13 years on titanium hips. So all that happened. It's 13 years last month since my mother passed away. It's 13 years in September since I separated from my wife. So like all that happened in a relatively short period of time, and it was life-changing, to say the least. And at the kind of as the story was improving, I mean, it sounds like a pretty rough period, and it was, but as I was getting better from these things, and having the hip surgeries, and I was now able to walk without pain, which I had not been able to do for some years either. I felt hope. I felt like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to survive. But then the energy was, well, there's something else kind of bubbling up inside you. You're not even sure what it is yet, but it doesn't look exactly like it did before you got sick. And so I faced, for months, I faced this dilemma of, I feel like I shouldn't be CEO anymore. I feel like I need to kind of set out on a new course, even though I'm not sure what that is. I'm feeling something. I'm not sure. I really don't know what it is. I just have to, right now, I got to focus on healing. I got to make sure I make it through.
Yeah. Well, in
All
your
this
case,
stuff.
you had that double whammy of having to, it had to be something that would allow you to continue your healing.
Yes.
You couldn't jump into something that was going to throw you backwards. So you
Yes.
had I would guess it had to be something that you created, as opposed to going out and getting a job.
Yes. Yes. And that was, thank you for that clarification, because that's exactly what it was. Because I was very conscious when I kind of got my own place, leaving the family home a few months after all this was going down. I realized that my number one priority truly was to heal. I mean, just learning how to walk again comfortably with muscles that now suddenly had no real joint anymore. Now it was made of titanium and ceramic and all kinds of weird stuff. And I'm the bionic man, and I know a lot of TSA agents on a first name basis, because now when I go through, I just point. That's what all of us that are hip replacement people.
I have a
You just
girlfriend that
point.
just had it done, and she's just going through that, and she's just starting to travel again. Yeah, yeah.
You just point. They all know. Okay, go through that thing. Okay, yeah, gotcha. So, but anyway, what you were alluding to that emerged a few
Yeah.
months later, which I didn't foresee. I didn't have a plan. Some people thought I was doing this because I wanted to sing and perform again. It was a hazy kind of, yeah, but there was no linear thought. It wasn't until, but that is what started to emerge. And so it was late 2011 when it was announced that I was stepping down as CEO of HeartMath. And it was right just before that I moved out and was now living in a new apartment on a golf course. I didn't play golf, but it was a great place to walk through all these paths
Yeah,
with a
yeah.
little bit of hills. And so like this was perfect. And it was a peaceful place and lovely in a valley of a forest. And so it was kind of a perfect place. But I went visiting my brother in DC, and this was Christmas of 2011. And he told me, "Hey, when are you getting into town? When's your flight land?" Because his wife and he had tickets for a Christmas Carol sing-along concert at the Kennedy Center. And my first cynical thought was, no, thank you. I think I've sung enough Christmas carols in my life. I don't now need to sing with 2,000 total strangers in Washington, D.C. That was the sarcastic New Yorker in me. And then I kind of like, dude, what are you doing that for? You don't know what's going to happen. This could be a marvelous experience. You don't know. Just go for it. Have fun. Your brother's inviting you to a fun concert. So I went, and I had been, for the previous couple of months, I had been singing in the car because for the first time in years, I was driving by myself all the time. Because before that, I was still often driving with my wife and daughter, or at
Right,
least
right.
one of them. And now I was always driving by myself. And so now I have Adele's latest album on, and I'd start harmonizing with Adele and enjoying it, like loving it. And Sarah Bareilles was another favorite of mine, and I would harmonize with her. But that was the extent of it. I wasn't like thinking about, oh, I need to get back on stage or any of that. It was just like, I'm having fun. I get to sing by myself in the car now. But then I go to this concert of Christmas carols. And as soon as I was there in the theater at the Kennedy Center, keep in mind, and as you know, I had been living in a redwood forest. I mean, it was a town. It wasn't like I was living off the land or something.
Yeah,
And
yeah, but I remember the trees were enormous, the roads were winding, there were no lights. So I know you weren't living in the forest like in a tent, but nonetheless, it's
yeah,
quite contrary to what you were experiencing on the East Coast.
yes, I moved from West 72nd Street and Broadway to a redwood forest. Yeah, so it was a pretty stark contrast. But anyway, really the point was when I was sitting there in that theater, and there was an incredible chamber orchestra that was playing all these carols and these hauntingly beautiful arrangements of Christmas carols. And they'd start playing something, and I think, what is this? And then it becomes the first Noel. It's like, oh my God, that is gorgeous. And we were occasionally invited to sing. There were professional choirs on stage, children's choirs and adult choirs, and this amazing orchestra. But I think 5 or 6 carols in is when we finally were now invited, all 2,000 of us, stand and sing "Joy to the World" with the hundreds of choral people on stage and the chamber orchestra. And of course, what a wonderful carol to start with. It's hard to not feel joyful when you sing that song. It happens to be in a perfect spot in my voice. And so I was just thrilled to be kind of singing out, with 2,000 people. It was so loud in there, I could not hear myself. I could not. I mean, I was pretty sure I was on tune, but I really couldn't. I mean, here and there, I kind of, yeah, that's me. But it was that loud. And as the carol ended and we're all sitting down, the lady standing in front of me, I didn't know who it was. She turns around. She says, "Who are you? You have an amazing voice." And the
Wow.
lady sitting next to me kind of says the same thing. Wow, like, who are you? And I said, "You can hear me? I can barely hear. I can't tell."
Oh,
And
how
that I kept getting those comments through the evening. And the lady to my left, who was a little white-haired lady from Northern Virginia, a church choir lady, and she leans over to me after a few carols and she says, "Are you available? Could you come and sing at our church next Sunday?" And this was like someplace in Virginia. I said, "Oh my God, this is so sweet. I live in San Francisco. It's a little far. I doubt you have the budget to bring me back." But it was just a marvelous evening. And then at the end of the concert, and I was having many, many moments of not just the joy of singing, although that was huge to be able to sing out loud, even with 2,000 other voices drowning you out. But it was the joy of being in the presence of exceptionally skilled artists and in glorious music. And I thought, wow, do I miss this? I didn't even realize how much I missed this. As much as I love the lifestyle of a redwood forest, and 30 minutes to the Pacific Ocean too, and 45 minutes to Silicon Valley and Stanford, and an hour and a half to San Francisco. I mean, this was not like in the middle of nowhere. It was still connected to civilization.
Right,
You,
right.
you didn't have to go far to have incredible beauty and incredible commerce and everything else, but it didn't have culture like that night of Christmas carols. And so being in the presence of that, it was profound for me. And I thought, wow, I need this so much. I miss this so much. And after the lady invited me to sing at her church, the following Sunday, as the evening ended, she was sitting to my left, and I had to go that direction to leave the theater. And she's kind of standing there like, you're not going anywhere yet. And she says, I could have listened to you all night. I feel like I know you so well. And when she said, I feel like I know you so well, our conversation had existed of about 2 sentences. Can you come and sing at my church? Who are you? You have a beautiful voice. I'm so sorry I live in San Francisco. That was it. And yet I was feeling so much that night. I mean, I was
Wow.
in tears a number of points. It was just so beautiful. The music was so, and I was like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you for bringing me here tonight. Thank you. And she could feel that. And I was so moved that this total stranger would stop to tell me she could feel me in that way. And I thought, okay, this is a significant life moment. And
Yeah,
I'm walking,
yeah.
I'm walking out of the theater, and I get a voice. I don't get voices. I've never
Oh, oh,
in
the
my life.
voice. Ah,
I get a voice, and I wasn't trying to identify the voice. It was just
right,
clear
right.
as a voice saying, "Your singing voice needs to be heard in the world again." And it's like, okay, let's do that. And the next morning, I was still kind of on a very much of a high from the evening. And of course, my brother and sister-in-law, they were aware of some of this. They knew there were comments coming to me, like they kept hearing me talking with the lady in front, to the lady to my left. And so they were aware it had been a kind of a big night for me. And the next morning, I reached out to my dear old friend, my old college roommate, and basically texted him and said, Gary is his name, Gary Malkin. I said, Gary, I've had a life-changing experience singing Christmas carols at the Kennedy Center. We've got to get together. We got to do something. And he texted me back. And how he recounts this is, he said, I've never seen you put so many exclamation points in a single text message. So clearly you were on fire with something. So I know I'm taking a lot of time with this story, but it's emblematic of me in many ways, because I allowed myself to feel all that night. I allowed myself to hear the voice. I allowed myself to say, okay, I'll open to that idea and
Right.
see what happens. And Gary was absolutely the person I was supposed to work with. And a month later, we got together for a weekend and hung out, and went for a hike. And I said, Gary, I've not hiked effectively in about 5 years. My hips couldn't do it. I said, I'm not sure what I can do, but I'll go for it. I'll try, and let's see what happens. And so we tried it, and I was like embarrassingly out of shape and winded and everything else, but I was trying, and it was cool. And then we finally get around to singing. And he was a 7-time Emmy Award-winning composer. He's a brilliant pianist. He's a brilliant performer, brilliant singer. And we were college roommates. So we'd known each other for 40 years at that point. And so we finally get to the piano. He's got this gorgeous, massive grand piano. And I'm feeling so honored, even though he is my old friend, honored that he's taking time to kind of help me out. And he says to me, as he would with any singer approaching him, he said, so what are you singing these days? And I said, I sing with Adele and Sarah Bareilles in the car. And he said, no, seriously, what are you doing? I said, no, seriously, that's it, bro. That's it. That's why I'm here. And he said, okay, well, we'll see how we work this out. So anyway, what unfolded was this marvelous connection with Gary, reconnection with Gary. And it led to us performing together. And we've performed dozens of times all over the world together since 2012 was when that started. And we focused a lot on healthcare originally, because we realized that part of the message for me now, because as I kind of got my sea legs again, and I realized I could sing again, I hadn't sung really seriously in 20 years.
Wow. Wow.
So I needed to get back into it, and he needed to help me, and I needed to kind of shake off the rust of the vocal cords, let alone my body, which had been going through all of that stuff for some years. So it took a little while to kind of get back in it, but the skill was still there. Once a dancer, you can still dance even after injury. Once a singer, I had such good training years earlier, I could get it back. And so it got kind of very exciting. But really what unfolded for me that is the most significant about all this was I allowed myself to accept that I was fundamentally a creative person at heart. As much as I love business and still am very involved in business and very involved teaching, I'm an artist at heart. And this was reawakened.
I
And
love
when Gary and I started performing together, we were doing what we called keynote performances. So instead of a regular keynote talk, which I'd been doing for 20 years in front of big audiences, but never much fun, it never was with music and singing. Now I had an Emmy award-winning composer who wrote his own music, let alone. And so now it was like a whole nother world. And I realized I'm in a very creative mode. We were hired by Kaiser to do a 2-hour keynote performance for 500 frontline Kaiser doctors and nurses, Kaiser health system in Northern California. And we created a show. I mean, we created a 2-hour event with video and poetry and music and the whole bit.
Was it simply a creative performance, or did you try to blend what you knew scientifically into any of it? Or
We
was
we blended it. They had hired me a year earlier to be a keynote speaker at the same conference a year earlier, and at that point I was in the middle of surgeries, and so I was just, my talk was, and remember the audience is frontline healthcare professionals.
right?
The title of my talk a year earlier had been Reflections of a Reluctant Patient.
Oh,
And so I was talking about kind of the emotional side of being a cancer patient and a double hip replacement patient. And they loved, and because of my HeartMath background, I could speak in a different level than
yeah,
just
yeah,
a regular patient.
sure.
And they were also getting involved with HeartMath. So it all kind of fit nicely. And it
Wow.
had gone very well. And then they called me up shortly after that event and said, we're doing another one next year. We hear some things have changed. I think what had happened in between was I'd had double hip replacement and I was now separated from my marriage and my mother died. So a few things that happened since the last
Yeah.
keynote. So they'd hired me to do another keynote talking to health professionals about my experience as a patient, but now it was kind of chapter 2, a whole bunch of more stuff had happened.
Wow.
And so I was booked to do that. And I said to Gary, Gary, I think if I suggest to them that, hey guys, I got an idea. I'll still give them the message you want me to convey. I'm still
Yeah.
that guy that now I'm a bladder cancer survivor. I wasn't
Sure.
that a year ago. And so I'll do all that, but I'm going to have an Emmy award-winning composer with me. We'll do live songs. We'll get the audience singing. It'll be fun. It'll all be about how to reawaken their heart. Why did they even get into healthcare in the first place? It wasn't for the hours, the fame, or the money, because none of those are appealing.
That is so brilliant, because I've done a fair amount of work in the healthcare sector myself. And that's the sad part of it, is that many people are so overworked. The reason they went into that profession in the first place is lost. And they're burnt out and they're tired. But when you start talking about touching people's hearts, and when you give them the simple techniques, which people learn really quickly, the HeartMath techniques are simple, and people learn them quickly, and they get reawakened to that place, and they see that their people are awakened to that place. It all comes together. It's so brilliant what you're doing. That's so brilliant.
Yeah, well, thank you. And you mentioned in your introduction about this theme of reinvention. And as I was in the midst of all of this, and 2011 was the really big year, because that's when my mother passed away. I realized I had to have hip replacement surgery. I had to have them both done. I had to step down as CEO. I had to.
Time. I know I've
No,
interrupted.
no,
Oh, I
I
have a
have
friend both at the same time. That's why I'm asking. I just don't
I
understand. It's
I could
possible.
not I could not imagine that. I thought, well, how do you heal? You don't have a good leg. I mean, you're like both, but and in my case, it would not have been smart because both were so severely arthritic that I lost
Oh,
so much cartilage that to have relied on the other one, like it would not have been a smart move. But anyway, I had them done separately. But anyhow, there was just a tremendous amount of joy kind of coming through, and and so this, we called it "What Makes Your Heart Sing." That the theme of what we were doing is helping
Beautiful.
people get in touch with what makes your heart sing. You got in touch initially in this career for reasons of service, of care. I mean, for some people, sure, it's a secure job, and I can be a nurse, so I can always get a job as a nurse. There's can be that element, but for a lot of people, especially ones that were there at this conference, it was more about I'm serious. I'm now a manager. I'm now a nurse leader. I'm now a doctor running a department. I'm not just an entry level health professional anymore. So it was very, very inspiring. But I guess to the point of reinvention, since you mentioned that term, was when I look back of what had happened. Since late 2009 is when I got the diagnosis that I had cancer. Was CEO of HeartMath when I got the diagnosis, sitting there in the doctor's office. We hadn't scheduled a surgery yet. He knew what the protocol would be. He said, "You got a large tumor. However, we suspect it's slow growing, and hopefully it hasn't attached, and hopefully it's going to be all cool. And but we'll do surgery, and then we'll do some immunotherapy afterwards, blah, blah, blah." And I said to him, "Well, okay, so I got a question for you. The answer can be no. So please tell me what the wise move here. I'm scheduled to go to the United Kingdom to lead a training session in a month, in middle of December, and I can cancel. I mean, I can not be there. It can go on without me. I would love to do it. It's people I love. I would, were this not happening, I would absolutely be wanting to. I was planning to do it, but if I'm, uh, risking anything, please tell me no." And he said, "No, I think that'll be fine. When you come back, we'll do the surgery." So that was actually kind of a relief that he felt it wasn't so serious, but still there was a lot going on. And so I was just kind of dealing with the reality of I'm now in this mode, and then all the
Mhm.
side trips that happened, getting staph infections, it's spreading to my blood, which is a life-threatening condition. So there was a lot kind of going on. But finally, when I emerged from all of it, I didn't use the term reinvention right away, but I realized I was in the midst of a big reinvention. And I was thinking of it as a renaissance, a rebirth. And in fact, after a few years, when people realized, "We didn't know you could sing. What's this concert thing you're now doing with Gary Malcolm? What's that? You're a singer?" I said, "Yeah, yeah. I used to be, and now I am again." And people who knew me and knew the stories, they kept saying, "You're like a Renaissance man. You've been reborn. I mean, you dodged a couple bullets there, dude. But also you're doing creative stuff again. You're singing, you're dancing. How are you dancing on two titanium hips?" And I said, "Well, it's taking some work. You don't just hop out of the hospital and start dancing. You got to rebuild the muscles and the ligaments and get the body used to titanium hips. But it's
Wow.
all possible." And so as I look back on this, I was realizing I was getting reborn and making certain choices to facilitate my own rebirth. In the case rebirth of those talents that I had not used for years, singing, dancing. I didn't really get into acting per se, and yet these keynote performances we were doing were very entertaining. They were very theatrical. I wasn't
Exactly.
I wasn't playing a role, but it was very much trying to create an environment of magic, not just a keynote talk, right? And so I was kind of operating all those cylinders. And after a while, people started making these comments about, "You're like a Renaissance man." And the more I thought about it, I thought, well, that's an old-fashioned term. I think. Then just one day, this name came to me, Renaissance human. But Renaissance human, ooh, I like the feel of that. Sounds different. That sounds more future. And then I thought, well, what do I mean by that? And I thought deep about this. I thought, well, what I've discovered for myself is that I'm fundamentally creative, but that's not just me. I mean, I happen to have certain things that I do that are public. So I appear to be more creative than other people because people know me from my photography. People know me from my music, my dance. That's public stuff. That doesn't mean I'm more creative than somebody who their whole job is customer service and they are solving creative issues every moment of the day because they're figuring out how to creatively deal with a very angry customer or a very tricky problem. And that person is absolutely as creative as somebody who can sing or dance, right? So I realized everybody's got these capacities, but most of us have had them shut down by parents, by teachers, by
So
siblings, by whatever. The creative spirit in whatever way it may manifest artistically or not. And so I thought, well, that's what I'm about. So a Renaissance human is really every human. Renaissance human is not a new elite class of artists. Renaissance human is saying we all have the capacity to continue. And this fits in perfectly with the theme of your show, The Growing Edge. I believe that we are all meant to continue to give birth to new parts of ourselves all throughout our lives. It doesn't end when puberty ends. It doesn't end when we leave college and suddenly we're in the workforce and now we can't be creative anymore. That's what we tell ourselves. You got to knuckle under and get the steady paycheck, and then you have a family, and oh, that's a whole nother level. Oh, I don't have time to be playful or be creative, and we sell ourselves short. And then God forbid 20 years later we start to have feelings like, what am I doing in this dead end job? What am I doing in the corporate rat race? And maybe you want to have a little fun, and so your peers tell you, oh, Bruce is going through a midlife crisis.
Crisis, yeah, yeah.
And I'm saying, no, that's not a midlife crisis. That's the part of you that is designed to keep growing, to always find what's next for me, instead of just saying, all that part of me was only when I was young. You only are learning when you're young. Why would that be? Why would God or the universe have said that's the way it should be? You only can have fun and grow and be alive when you're young, and then it's just a slow decline into decrepitude and disease and death.
Well,
What?
let me ask you a business question, because I know you teach at Stanford. You're still teaching at Stanford?
Yes.
Well, when you teach there, are you talking at all about the renaissance of humanity at work? Because what I'm seeing is that we are finally, we're looking back, I think, and saying, when did business work well? When were people happy at their jobs? When did work feel like a place where you could go and be creative? And there was a time when we had that. But then I don't know, we got into the pieces and parts mentality, and we started calling people labor on spreadsheet. Just too many spreadsheets, right? Labor, let's cut the labor. But what I am seeing is that there is a renaissance. There is a resurgence of noticing that these are human beings that work for us, and right now they're very stressed. Right now they're worried. Right now, there's a lot of concern in the workplace. So are you addressing the fact that leadership has to start doing something else to bring that creativity back, to bring the life back into people, to give them the opportunity to become their best selves at work?
Yeah, everything you just said is it's on point. I agree with all that. It absolutely, in most organizations, has to start at the top, because that
Yeah.
person or that board or whoever is the one in charge. Usually, it's a single person, right? Is the dominant influence in the organization. If they're not embodying it and not just not just talking the talk, but walking it too. Without that, people are going to be cynical, and I think the level of cynicism is probably an all-time high. We're so cynical, so skeptical of leaders in any field, celebrities, let alone politicians, let alone CEOs. I mean, when the board of Tesla approved the $48 billion pay package for 1 year, I thought, this is upside down world. I mean, this has now become normalized that that got shot down because it was like such an egregious abuse of a company's money. But then the board all said, but we wouldn't be here without him. So he deserves every penny of the 48 billion. So whether you love Elon Musk or not, I think my point is what goes at the top, clearly he's all about the money. And then that's kind of what's known of anybody who works in any of his organizations. And so the sense of you can be creative, well, good luck with that. You'll be out the door in no time. Look at
Yeah.
what happened with Twitter. So it does start at the top for sure. And so I think it's more of a mixed bag than ever. I think on the one hand, when we were starting out in the early 90s and our first corporate workshops, there was plenty of openness in Silicon Valley, because
Oh,
Silicon Valley, very progressive area in general. They were at the leader. They were at the forefront of so many advances in technology, especially, but also in workforce practices. And we found that even in the 90s, a lot of organizations in the Valley were intrigued by HeartMath because bringing HeartMath in gave them an edge. So we had any number of Silicon Valley companies that wanted to bring in HeartMath because HeartMath with this new, cool, science-based, but
Mm.
human process. So why wouldn't we want that? Because it's a war zone out there fighting for talent. And so I think there's still a lot of that going on. So when I say a mixed bag, the awareness in the world has expanded so much. I mean, when we were starting, mindfulness was only known to a relatively small number of organizations. I mean, there were thousands of people practicing it, probably millions even in the early 90s, but it wasn't being adopted in organizations yet. And look at it today. I mean, mindfulness is everywhere. It's like, and even the language of being mindful is being used by people who don't really even know what that means, but it's become very mainstreamed, let alone yoga, let alone, so many things, let alone being vegan, let alone so many things that when we were starting were very much fringe ideas, very much California type ideas, but now
Yeah.
they're everywhere. I mean, when I was in a Shell gas station in the supermarket and I could buy raw kombucha, I thought, okay, the world has changed. The world has changed. And so there's areas where there's so much more awareness in organizations, and of course the younger generation, not the boomers, not like you and me, our generation, but the younger generation, the millennials and even Gen X have grown up in a more aware period. And so the way they're leading organizations, to me, sometimes is a little too sloppy, but there's a lot more awareness in general of the need for balance and mindfulness, and which were and even the organizational structures are far less top down and far less rigid in many cases,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I think the consciousness of a lot of the people in business has gradually expanded. There are more and more people that are regular meditators, more and more people that regularly go on retreats, more and more people that are in men's groups or in women's groups or in plant medicine or in this or that, or it's become more and more commonplace. The number of people that have coaches. I mean, I remember even 15, 20 years ago in Silicon Valley, it's like if you didn't have a coach, what do you mean you don't have a coach?
Yeah.
How can you do your job and not have a coach? I mean, it was becoming so much of a thing. And now,
Right.
now we're 20 years later. And so that culture was like, well, of course you have to constantly improve yourself. Of course, you need to be on your own growing edge. And that's what you need a coach for. That's what you need a mentor for. This part of the joy I get because I get to mentor people, and some in healthcare and other executives and whatever. And it's fun to work with them because people want, as you would know from all the work you do, JoAnna, that people who are drawn to having a mentor or being coached are people who know they need to grow. They may have resistance, but
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
wouldn't be seeking somebody to assist them if they didn't intuitively know, I know I need to grow and I know I need some support to do that. And I
Right.
mean, I look back at my multifaceted career, every aspect of all the things I've done in my life that I ever got good at, I had a mentor or a coach.
Oh,
Absolutely.
okay.
No,
Love.
there was no exceptions. Nothing that I ever got good at did it happen without some very significant person who mentored slash coached slash whatever, advised me. So I think that's, and then the last thing I would comment on, back to your bringing up reinvention at the beginning, is that I think COVID and all this
Oh,
social aspects of COVID, forgetting vax or not, mask or not, forgetting that whole dimension of it, but just what it did to us in terms of realizing, okay, there's certain decisions are being made for me. Hopefully it's in my interest, but it may not be. And whatever my position was, there was still an awareness that I got to take more responsibility for myself. And and also, of course, hugely, and this was a big one for me, let alone millions of others, the social isolation that happened then was debilitating. And it also, and in that period of so much incredible uncertainty, which hasn't really improved, we just don't have that issue in our face. There isn't less uncertainty now. There's maybe even more because the climate's worse, more devastating storms, more devastating geographical things, weather things, and the political situation is arguably far more chaotic now than it was before COVID. The economic situation is, I mean, nobody feels happy about the economy, yet a lot of the metrics are actually saying compared to the rest of the world, we're actually doing pretty darn good here in America. But people don't feel that way. They don't feel like,
bread, you're not comparing yourself to someone else on the other side. I mean, when the reality, especially if you're raising a family, I mean, food prices are
Exactly.
hideous,
Exactly.
hideous. And in
Exactly.
the marketplace, that's one thing that I've been noticing lately that actually gets me very angry is that they're shrinking this. You have a recipe that says you need a pound of this, and then you look at the thing and it says 15 ounces. Gee, when I grew up, I thought a pound was 16 ounces. They're gradually shrinking what they're putting into the packages. It's almost hard not to be cynical at times like this. So
Yeah.
what do you do to maintain that sense of joy? And what makes you happy? What gives you joy other than that? I mean, singing, obviously, performing, being creative. Is there anything else in your world that you would share with us about creating joy and creating happiness?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm a nature addict now. At the moment, as you know, we're not exactly neighbors, but we live in the same state right now, Florida. And every night, if I can, lately it's we've been having too many evening showers and storms. But every night when I can, I take a walk after dinner. There's this little park that's about 100 yards. The entrance to the park is literally about 100 yards from the front door of where I'm living. And so
Wow.
I walk out to this little, it's a little county park and it's mostly for families, jungle gym, and it's not big, but it's got kind of a meandering path and there's a beautiful little river that goes through it. And so there's a couple bridges and it's just a lovely little walk. And I discovered a month or two ago that if I go at the right hour, the skies are incredible. And I never saw it from the house because the house where I'm staying has got a lot of trees and you can't see really what's going on in the clouds. You got to get out there, and you actually need to get out towards the park because at the park there's some places where the skies open up and you can see more. And I get just overwhelmed, like, oh my God. Like the other day I was going out and it was quite gray and I thought, oh, it's not going to be, there won't be much tonight. And I was still fine with that because I still like getting a little bit of exercise after dinner, just a stroll and in some fresh air, even if it is 85 and 90% humidity. Actually, the other night it was still 90 at 8:30 at night. It was still 90 degrees and 90% humidity. I thought, oh, but it was still fun to get outside. But anyhow, all the sky looked gray when I stepped outside the door. And then as I got closer into the park and started looking up to where the sun was going down, there was this glow on the horizon. And then that glow spread and then it was bouncing off and there was golden in the clouds on the other, completely the other direction. It was just like, oh my God. And I was sure that this was just going to be, oh, it was just going to be a gray night and I wasn't going to see anything. And sure enough, it pops out. And you can see just in my description of it, the joy it brings me, right?
Oh,
And then I will sometimes I get so many photos that I don't stop and post very many of them, publicly, but very often, as often as I take them. I'm a couple months behind in posting. I've got some great shots from a cruise I took, and I haven't posted any of them. Incredible sunrises over the ocean. But that's how I get some joy too, is I will share at least maybe close friends or somebody I've just had a chat with. They'll say, what are you doing tonight? Have a look. Here's what I just did for the last half hour. And I'll send 15 incredible sunset photos. So I get a lot of joy sharing creative
nice.
inspiration that I
I,
have with friends, or communities, and wherever it may be. And that's a big deal to me, is to stretch myself to get out of the house when it's hot and otherwise easy to stay at home,
yep.
and look up. And people say, how do you see so many amazing sunsets? I say the answer is look up. I look up.
Okay.
And I mean that as a
If I,
psychological view, not as well as the obvious physical,
yes,
but I
and that
keep my, like, what's going on? It's a whole world up there and it's constantly changing. Keep watching. There's liable to be some in Florida, as you know, and living here all these years. There are some incredible skies, a lot.
Yeah, and the colors. I go a walk on the beach. I'm fortunate to live close enough to the
Yeah.
beach, and I'm there almost every night. And you can go there and not see a thing, and then all of a sudden turn around. There's this pink glow, and then there's a gold. Me too. I take pictures all the time, but like, I don't post them. Marty Seligman. Dr.
Yeah.
Martin Seligman, the founding
Yeah.
father of psychology. You probably know him well. His wife is a photographer, and she started a website and a movement called Seeing Happy, encouraging people to do just what you do. Is when you see something that makes you happy, snap a picture of it. And then I think you can post it on their website. You can become one of their photographers. But
Oh,
my My daughter's a photographer, and so much of her joy comes from her. She's into flowers. So pictures of flowers, and oh my goodness. So that, you know what that ties into? Dr. Kelter from University of California in Berkeley just wrote a
Yes.
book about awe. So I am
Right.
fascinated about the the benefits of awe that you can find in those small moments. You don't have to go to the Grand Canyon. The Italians call that a passaggio, by the way. Your walk
Mm.
after dinner is called a passaggio. So you take a leisurely walk after dinner, and then you can find, all the treasures that you can find as the sky changes colors. What a beautiful way to find joy. Beautiful. Anything else besides nature that gives you joy or makes you happy?
Well, I am moved almost every day by some piece of music. Uh, I have a lot that will do it for me. Some of them it's because it gets me moving. There's a few tracks lately I've been listening to from this Danish group called Bliss, and several of their tracks, the rhythm is just like as soon as I start this one of these songs, I start kind of scat singing like I'll be scatting along with the rhythm of this music because I feel it so much. I mean, I used to do percussion when I was HeartMath had a band years ago, as you may remember, and I was a
Yeah.
I played bongos and conga, so I have a feel for like I want to, and I'm a dancer, so if I hear something that's got a rhythm, I'll want to like start speaking it out. I've gotten way better at this because in the last several months, have several tracks that as soon as I hear them, I have to start scat singing. And it's just an improv thing. Nobody ever taught me how to do it. I just find myself wanting to be the percussion, a vocal percussion along with the song. So that's one of the things that gives me a lot of inspiration, actually. And I can do that anytime driving to the gas station. I'll just play certain tracks. Other times I'll have certain tracks that I play that there's something that's so deeply touching about the harmonics of the song, the harmonies in the song, that it just awakens something. There's certain songs that I'll hear a certain place in the song, and it'll just be like, oh my God, that feels so good. Thank you, God, thank you that we have music. That there's something called music that even exists that has the power to move us like this. And music has moved me for a very long time, and I'm very open to allowing life to present a song to me that will move me. And so people send me stuff all the time. Well, you might like this song, and it doesn't always move me, but I'm easily moved by music, and I have many pieces of music that do that can move me in different ways. Sometimes it's to want to get out of my little rut and just start being funky, just having fun. Other times it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh my God, the genius of the humans that created this, let alone the inspiration that they were receiving. So I can easily be in awe of music. And I'm often saying to people like you're not using music enough. Don't just turn on the radio or turn on a playlist, but or random stuff, but like look for stuff and save stuff. And when you have stuff that have moved you, like there's a song from the 80s, the Isley Brothers, who were like a funk band of these really really fun funky black guys from the city, like from Harlem or wherever. I think they were from New York, wherever they were from. And they did this one song called "The Caravan of Love." It's a very 80s song.
Huh?
I just tears start coming down my face every time I hear that song, "The Caravan of Love." If you don't like 80s funk, you won't like the song. But for me, that's a go-to song for me. Every now and then I gotta hear "Caravan of Love" again because there's something. It was created in a time of where there were a lot of musicians doing songs for the world. We Are the World, Live Aid, and all that. This was not a song like that, but the way they did the video, it was like we're joining a caravan of love for our brothers and sisters, and it was very. I'm just thinking about it, and it's doing it to me, and it's very inspired for me. It doesn't mean it's for anybody else, but it is for me, and so that's my point. Is go back to those songs that ever did it for you, or those movements of symphonies that ever did it for you, or there's certain passages in certain pieces of music. The guided meditations that Gary and I did back in 2013, he created this beautiful piano soundtrack live as I was reading the meditation. And after he did some editing and not editing, but expansion, added some different tracks to the live piano. And there's this one place he added this very simple chord progression in the background. I was talking, and when he was playing this for me before we'd released it, there was this one place where it goes through this transition. It was like, oh my God, that was so beautiful. And Gary was like, which place was that? Like he added it because it added a beautiful mode. It added a beautiful mood, but
It
it
moved,
touched,
it really moved you.
it moved me so much. And to this day, I can listen to that 5-second piece of this meditation soundtrack and thank God that he did that. He added this little jewel of a moment. Maybe nobody else hears it like I do, but for me, there was something about the way the harmonies moved. I was just like, oh man, that was beautiful. Wow. And so obviously I'm tuned into this. So I'm looking for this. I'm opening. My system is always saying, feed me anything else or remind me of something like the Isley Brothers from 1986 or whenever that was, the Caravan of Love. Help me remember, help me find that space again. Because to your point of awe, I love that word. I feel like it is hard to experience awe a lot of the time. And I would say also that I think a lot of us, we need to release stuff we're carrying that can even allow us to feel awe. Because you could have two people in a sunset, you're standing there in awe, and the other person is looking at their watch, and I got to get back to check the stock market, or whatever else. They're not experiencing anything even close to awe. And so I think there are many humans where we don't know how to let go of stuff we're carrying emotionally or worries, pressures, financial pressures, anything to allow us to even experience those things. And so I've my own practice a lot over the last 15 years really has been, what do I need to let go of in energy wise, that some anxiety that I'm just kind of living with, and breathe it out, let it go. Just tell yourself, let go of that energy, because if I'm not letting go, I'm not as sensitive to seeing the sky, to remembering to go outside, to
Oh, right. That's a
yeah.
great question. What do I need to let go of? That's your question. What do I need to let go of?
Yeah, and
I love
yes,
that.
but
I love,
also some, I mean, and sometimes it's very obvious. Something happened. Like the other day, I got a very aggressive text message at 8 a.m. Monday morning. It was like, okay, the worst possible time. And it was kind of like World War III had just started. And luckily
oh,
it all got resolved and all that. But through the day, it was like a lingering anxiety because I knew I needed to have a talk with the person later that day. And we had a great talk, as it turned out. But there was this kind of lingering, like first just the shock of how the text message was worded, but then also kind of some dread of this could not be, this could be a very challenging, maybe last conversation with this person. It didn't go that way. It was the opposite. But part of why it didn't go that way was through the day, I realized I've got anxiety about this upcoming call. And I have to be prepared that this could be kind of a final conversation because of how aggressive the person had been and some of the things the person was saying. And so I thought, I've got to be okay that it could be that this is the end of this phase of this connection that we've got. It wasn't a romantic thing, but it was a business thing, but it was a friendship thing too. And so it didn't go that way. But I think partly was because through the day I was recognizing you've got to let go of that anxiety. That's not going to help.
what was the thing you did that allowed you to let go of the anxiety?
Well, breathing. And
Breathing.
when I say breathing, in this case, it was, and this
Heart
concept,
breathing.
well,
Yeah.
and specifically this idea of the sigh of relief, and that we talked about the other day when you and
Yeah. The
the
sigh of relief.
sigh of
Talk
relief.
a bit about that before we go, because I was
Yes,
actually, if you have the time to go a few
yes,
more minutes.
sure. I'm happy to do that. It's very, very worthwhile. Well, the phrase sigh of relief has an association. Just hearing it is like, oh, thank God. Something is like, it could have gone so bad and it didn't. And oh, thank God. Or we were afraid our team was going to end, but we went at the last minute. Oh, thank God. Well, the first time I really noticed that feeling profoundly in me was when it was post cancer surgery. I don't know, a couple months afterwards, and the first big test to make sure that nothing had come back. And I was feeling confident. I felt like the surgery had gone well. My doctor was confident. And I just energetically in my body, I just felt like I think I'm, I'm good. I'm not really worried about the results. And I was waiting, and I knew the doctor was going to call me on a certain day, and all that. And then there's his name showing up on the caller ID, and I get on the call with him, and right away he says something to me like, "Well, I got great news for you. The test came back negative." And in my body, it was a huge sigh of relief. Actually, much bigger than I even expected, because I thought I had it all together. I thought I was really confident, and I was to an extent. I wasn't sitting there all nervous. I wasn't doing that. And yet, when I heard the words and his comforting voice, there was a whole nother level of pressure that had been in my system that I really hadn't been conscious of. And so this was a huge insight to me then. This was back in 2010 of like, wow, had a great feeling. And then when I heard this is an actual concept and an actual way we can use our breath to help us out, and that our bodies are actually designed to release pressure every 5 minutes or so. There's a mechanism built in Mother Nature, designed into every human. About every 5 minutes is when it's programmed. We can miss it, but a lot of times we can not notice we're kind of holding our breath, and then we're going to go, oh, or you put down your pen and realize, oh, I finished it in time, and you go, oh. There's an unconscious habit to do that. Well, that's the system that knows you need to release the pressure you've been hanging on to. So what this guy, Sage Rader, dear friend, brilliant, innovative artist, researcher, biohacker, poet, author, composer, amazing guy. He created this technique called sigh of relief that specifically encourages us to breathe in like bigger than a normal breath, and then just let go, just like let go of the breath. You're not pushing it out, you're not writing it down, but so you're not going, it's not that. It's just like just letting it go. Like the feeling when you know what that feeling of relief. I remember the feeling of the doctor's voice. I didn't go, that wasn't what I did. My body just naturally, I just let go of that pressure and that tension I was holding. So that concept, keep that in mind, to do a sigh of relief. You don't have to even remember the technique, but we're designed, our Mother Nature knows that pressure builds up in us for all kinds of reasons. And that's why sometimes you miss the moment of awe, because there was too much pressure in the way. You didn't think to go outside to see that cloud. You didn't think to, because you were caught up in the thing. I mean, not like it's like me, like all of us. So anyway, that's a big thing to me. It's very important to have the ability to inspire ourselves and be inspired by others. But often there's noise in the way of doing that, and which HeartMath's been talking about for 30 plus years. But I believe part of it is the ability to let go, again, you don't have to even necessarily know the thing that's causing it, because sometimes it's just multiple sources. It's just the combination of things. It's not just one thing. And so just to be able to say, my body's designed to release pressure, just let go right now, just let go. And invariably that freshens up the attitude. You feel lighter when you let go a little bit.
Absolutely.
When you're lighter, you're more open to, you know what, I need to do that. I need to step outside. I've been sitting at my computer screen for the last 6 hours. It's time to walk outside and then you look up there. Wow, look at that. Look at that bird. Do they have birds like this here? Wow.
So what's next for you? And then I will let you go. You've been so generous with your time. So in your own reinvention, what's next for you?
Well, I have discovered that for me, and I think it's really true for all of us, but some of us are more goal oriented than others, and some of us are supposed to be more goal oriented, and some of us are not, in my opinion. I don't know what's next for me. I try to stay open. I have senses of things, so I'm creating more online evergreen courses that'll live in various platforms about heart brain coherence, about creativity, about reinvention. I love to mentor people around all these ideas. I love to speak. I love to perform. So I'm doing all of those things, but life tends to often. I live in Florida. I never in a million years thought I would kind of ever live in Florida, let alone it's now.
Never thought I'd be here.
And
since you've been here, but
so So I don't know what may be in store, and life is every single significant thing in my life had not been a goal. Every significant thing I ever did had not been a goal. So for me, I'm not, goals do not do it. It's being
Happy.
open. It's pursuing things that make my heart sing. So that's what I do. But then seeing what then gets drawn back and allowing yourself to be delighted. And then the power of awe is even stronger, because the awe didn't happen because you wanted that thing and then you got it. That's one level of excitement, like I accomplished that. But when you
Yeah.
can stand in the face of something, whoa, I didn't see this coming. Wow. And then to be like, oh my God, thank you so much. I never would have imagined that this could have
Yeah.
happened or whatever.
Well, I think that's going to keep you young forever.
That's well, my favorite phrase is the goal of life is to die young as late as possible.
Oh, I like that.
So
Dying
I
young
will
is
stay
lovely.
young, and whenever is the time to go, I'll be youthful and fulfilled, as opposed to decrepit and like, please, let's end this thing.
Well, I think that's the way it's supposed to be. I think we just had some, we had some bad examples. We're constantly fed uh, decrepit examples, as opposed to the people that are doing it well and having fun and being in awe and being in joy. We don't see a lot of that.
Yeah,
And I hope we get to see more of it. And I hope we get to see
me
more
too.
of you. You're amazing. You're
Thank you.
amazing. The one thing I want to do now, I still have CDs. So I'm pretty sure I have the Renaissance Human CD somewhere.
It does exist as a CD somewhere. I don't have any more.
My living room. So, if that's the case, I may just go look for it, put a little music on, and dance around for a bit. So that would be lovely.
Well, Renaissance Human, that's the name of album I released, as you say, in 2018. It's on Apple Music. It's on
Oh,
it's
okay.
on Spotify, Amazon. I mean, it's on 20 different platforms, but the biggest two are Apple Music and Spotify.
But it sounds so much different when it comes through the big speakers on the old stereo than it does
Yeah.
coming out
Well,
here.
yeah.
One of
Yeah.
those. That's the thing that I'm missing. I'm having a lot of fun with some older music that I know the words to. I think there's even been studies done when you put people in a container, in a contained environment, and you feed them the food they ate 20 years ago, and you play the music they listened to 20 years ago. Their biomarkers change in the course of one or
Yes.
2 weeks, and they become younger. So
Indeed.
one of my practices every day literally is to look in the mirror and go, I'm getting younger and younger every day. So I just keep
And you
telling
are.
myself, yeah, all right, yeah, I think I am. I
You
think I
are.
am. You've been a prince. Thank you so very, very much. I hope we get to visit again soon.
Me
And thank
too.
you for being on the inaugural program. Where I'm still working out all the details, but you know what? I'm more like you. I like the creative urge. I like to flow with it and not have quite so much structure, which is why we're doing it
Yeah.
this way. No fancy music, no introductions. No, I've been wanting to do a podcast for years. Had a name, did the thing. When I found out all the steps it took to get there, I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And then all of a sudden I realized I do this all week long. Why not record it? Why not have fun? Why not have a theme? And why
There you
not
go.
with the very smart, amazing, creative people that I know to join me? So you've been wonderful. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, JoAnna. It was a delight.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.